All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. I'm very excited for a lot of reasons. First off, because we're joined today by two incredible gentlemen, Brandon and Lewis, of course. And Lewis is back with another, what I'm sure is going to be fantastic presentation. I don't believe. I think it's certainly been. I think it's been over a month at this point since the last recording of this of your last presentation, Lewis. And I want to thank the both of you guys for doing the last one without me, just because it was my birthday and all. So with that said, Brandon, how you doing? And then we'll jump over to Lewis.
Dude, love to it, and thank you. And you guys rescheduled because of some weird shit going on. So this is all love, dude. Thank you so much. And yeah, dude, that Peter Pan one was outstanding. Lewis, these just keep upping in caliber, and it's absolutely fascinating. And I was just telling an artist friend we're working with the publishing house about you yesterday, and so he can't wait to meet you. By the way, so very excited about all of this, and let's get it, dude. This is so cool.
Fantastic. And Lewis, of course, without further ado, how you doing? And the floor is yours.
Thank you, man. I'm always blessed. Grateful to be here. It was meant to be today. We've rescheduled so many times. It was Brandon and then you, and then, it was meant to be today. So I think we're going to get some beautiful insights today.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Clear.
Exactly. I just want to make sure you can't hear my fan because I'm sweating my ass off. It's boiling. No? Awesome.
We got the
awesome.
same. I got a fan going here, but it's pointing at our husky dog that's on the couch. So same thing. Yeah. Thank you, noise
Lucky folk.
Yeah.
Oh, trust me. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
My wife's going to lose her shit on this, by the way. All right. In advance. She's losing it.
Give me 2 seconds. Just want to make this bigger. There we go. So obviously today we'll be covering Harry Potter. Before we begin, however, I'd just like to state that the films I'll be delving into will all contain certain themes and archetypes. My desire to showcase these themes and archetypes isn't due to my lack of ideas pertaining to what each character may be or what the image or story may represent. Symbolism and archetypes are everywhere. They are part of the macrocosmic and world and microcosmic world. And as such, we will likely be covering them in many films. I was also a bit apprehensive covering this film in particular, or this series of films in particular, as the spells, characters, and history of Harry Potter is so vast and intricate that I didn't want to assume anything about things that are already known to be true to, let's say, Harry Potter enthusiasts as something other than I would label them as. So in other words, if I falsely tell a mistruth about a character's past or a spell, I apologize, as I am not and do not claim to have knowledge that extends to the far reaches of the Potter enthusiasts. This analysis will only be based on the films and not the books, although I'll be referencing the books very, very briefly. I'm unsure at this stage whether I'll be doing all 7 films. This is just due to time, effort, and overall ideas on the films. I'd like to keep the series fresh and bring something new to every film and every episode. I want to keep it interesting. I don't want to tackle the same films on and on. So there's that. We'll see how this one goes. Just like The Wizard of Oz, this is a film, or this is a series of films based on growth, conquering your demons, and of ascension. Each film corresponds to a chakra, and this is why there are 7 books to correspond with the 7 chakras, although it was made 8 due to the length and, of course, financial incentives like The Hobbit, for instance. Each film, he ascends after completing a necessary trial, in which the next film, we will find that he has grown up, correlating to the rising and conquering of the previous chakra. Each year responds to 1 chakra level. We will see in the end of this film, in particular, he completes the task of the root chakra, the first chakra, and attends the red stone, being that of the Philosopher's Stone, and the Chamber of Secrets, the second film. He saves Ginny, who has ginger or orange hair, and is the sacral chakra, or sacral. I'm not saying the properties of the item are necessarily correlative with the chakra point, i.e. the Philosopher's Stone is red, which is the root chakra, but this doesn't mean that the Philosopher's Stone has anything to do with the root chakra. It's just that in the first film in particular, I believe the symbolism was more transparent and open than it is in the others. I believe due to the change in the director from Christopher Columbus, who you might know has directed films such as Home Alone and The Gremlins and a lot of child films. The visions for the films changed, and as a result, the obvious symbology was removed. We see that Dumbledore no longer wears a purple robe, and the endings aren't as symbolic and obvious in their relationship to esoteric and occult practices. The films themselves become darker not only in the cinematography, but in the actual telling of the story. So we lose that childlike nature of the films, and we begin a descent into darker waters. Here is what is known as the divine trio. We see this everywhere, and it is obviously the triangle, as well as in geometry, body, mind, and soul. Harry is the soul / the heart. Now, Harry is the alchemical symbol for Earth and the Fool in the major arcana. He speaks to beginnings. He's new to the wizarding world. He's led by his soul / his heart. He takes the leap of faith, literally, when he joins Hagrid and leaves his family and trusts Ron. And he literally takes the leap of faith when he jumps at the train station, when he runs at the wall. He's financially wealthy, as we see in Gringotts, and he is of pure heart and pure intention. The alchemical symbol for Earth, obviously a connection to the physical world, and born skills and tools are one's disposal from either birth or a very young age. Next, we have Ron, which is the body / courage. Ron speaks to strength in the major arcana, courage, quiet control, bravery, confidence, and is a symbol for Leo, which is it the zodiac? I think it's the zodiac. Obviously, the alchemical symbol for fire is will, courage, and action, and it doesn't. I don't think we can miss that. Obviously, the fire is orange, his hair is orange, and the lion is also orange. Next, which is the most obvious one, we have Hermione, which is the mind / the intellect. She is the hermit in the major arcana tarot, the search for knowledge. She's isolated, loves discovery, inner guidance, and solitude. She is the alchemist symbol for air, intellect / the mind. Oh. Next, we have the three main teachers that I'll be covering: Snape, McGonagall, and Dumbledore. Dumbledore is the divine masculine, strength, reason, confidence. He's protective and obviously extremely powerful. This is why he has the Elder Wand and was perhaps the only wizard that Voldemort feared, or at least stood in the way of him killing Harry. He can also be seen as the crown chakra, as he is the illuminated one. Dumbledore is connected with the light, and thus he's connected with gold. He's wise and seemingly all-knowing, and anyone that has watched the films will recall his subtle deviousness with his hints, his winks, and his advice, where he seems to know exactly what they must do in any situation. We can notably think about the Prisoner of Azkaban, where he advises them to use the time turner, and in the Chamber of Secrets in Hagrid's house, where he has the ability to know that they are hiding underneath the invisibility cloak, and then advises them about the next step. The picture on the right is actually the coronation chair, the bottom right, reinforcing Dumbledore's connection to the idea of royalty. Next, I just wanted to showcase the fact that if you watch the films, he's the only one with the gold cup. All the others, I believe, have silver and perhaps bronze, but he's the only one with the gold cup. You might then ask, so who is the divine feminine? And I think this is represented by three characters: Professor McGonagall, Molly Weasley, and Hagrid. I believe all three encapsulate this motif, and the reason that we have three characters instead of one is so just how important care and love is, as it's a pinnacle of the series. This is why in the Order of the Phoenix, as Harry is being tortured by Voldemort, he states how sorry he feels for Voldemort, because he will never experience love or friendship. I believe these can also be seen as the heart chakra, or at least they present qualities as they all care deeply for Harry. We also have the three characters making this shape if we connect them all together, which in turn creates what? This, the Holy Grail. The bottom picture is also the universal symbol for female.
Can I just say very quickly as well? Could you go back for a second? That symbol is also what is done in particle physics to induce a gradients in the local metric, which utilizes basically the magnetic field, which correlates to the divine feminine. So that is, to me at least, that's huge. So thank you for putting this together.
Yeah. Yeah, and then as well, one half of the Merkaba, which would be the female representative half, which you had the symbol for earlier for the male. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So last teacher we'll be covering is Snape. Now, Snape is the shadow self. The shadow self watches your back and protects you. And we know this is what Snape does, for Harry the whole series. He's constantly protecting Harry through his love of Harry's mother, Lily. He was also a Death Eater and later masquerades as a Death Eater in order to gain Voldemort's trust. And I don't think it's a coincidence. He's all in black, including his hair. Lastly, we have Voldemort, who is perhaps the R-complex / the psychopathic components within ourselves. In the book, he actually appears to be a snake, but for the film, they decided to make him appear more human. Probably for the realism, I'm guessing. He is clearly draconian and reptilian in his outlook on people and in the world itself. Survival of the fittest, power, rage, etc. I don't think it's a coincidence that he can also communicate in Parseltongue, i.e. talk to snakes. He also speaks to me to a disconnection to the soul. He is the complete inverse of Harry. It is perhaps advisable for those wanting to grow and be the best versions for themselves to avoid where necessary the R-complex / psychopathic ideological way of life. It's the classic psychopath, no compassion, no soul, no conscience. When we have the psychopathic R-complex in charge, we see what life is like. I don't even need to go for examples, but we can think of dictators, and obviously we can watch many films of tyrants. We must be vigilant and be aware of our more primitive psychopathic selves, for if we do not, well, watch Harry Potter and tell me how that turns out.
Right.
In the first few seconds of the film, literally I think it's like 5 seconds in, we are presented with the image of this lamppost. I've highlighted it in on the right picture. It is, of course, the cross. Now, the cross speaks to Christ consciousness that Dumbledore perhaps possesses. He also then uses something called a deluminator to show how he's the enlightened one, and he controls the light. I apologize for the blurry pictures. It's really bad, but
no, it's great because the cross, even the lamppost and cross and all that, everything about this was a callback to your Peter Pan episode when we talked about the.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. It's great.
Yeah.
It's brilliant how it sort of all connects, even if it doesn't, even if it wasn't intentional. It's weird how it all connects. Again, speaking back to Peter Pan, Dumbledore is closest to the light, speaking to how he is the illuminated one, and McGonagall stands near. I've just put here, we see this in Peter Pan as well, which is synchronicity. Harry's famous scar is a symbol of abrupt enlightenment and awakening. He first becomes physically aware of how his scar is not just a scar, as he meets Voldemort for the first time in the form of Professor Quirrell, who is cleverly seated next to Snape. And Quirrell also has the back of his head shown to the camera where Voldemort would be. It's really sweet. Harry's scar is also a sign of potentiality. There are two ends, two final options of where something can either leave or exit, speaking to the two possible potentials that exist in Harry's life. As we see this later, this is twofold: good or evil, slavery or freedom, Harry dies or Voldemort dies. Lastly, it speaks to how, and I'd love to give full credit to Dave for this idea, for this explanation, is that lightning must have a zigzag due to the relationship with the ether. What is Harry? He is human and he is magic. He's a Horcrux and he is an individual. Just like people's personal connection with the soul, we can either get closer to it or further away from it. We can harm it or we can love it. This again is the story of Harry Potter. It is the attempted destruction of the soul, and with the destruction of the soul comes the destruction and enslavement of the world. When we lose our connection to our soul, we lose all that is good, all that is pure. We then allow the forces of what people might call evil, the force of the Death Eaters in this instance, to enslave us and bring about the world they want. And so what's the remedy for this? To save the soul. If we add the first letter of each of Harry's parents, so J and L, and invert it, we get the Ankh. Now, James is, of course, the masculine left side, if we look at it normally, and Lee is the feminine right side. When these two come together, no pun intended, and make love, they create the third potential, which is, of course, Harry.
It's the same thing with like electromagnetic and gravity, right? They come together to make sweet, sweet love. And that's how gravity is. That's the baby of it.
Yeah.
Gravity is Harry Potter. That's fascinating.
I just wanted to point out briefly the importance of the cross for a second, as I'm likely I will continue to bring it up in a few presentations. Sure, sometimes there will be a cross and it will have no deeper meaning than purely its architecture. However, I believe it is not important what you look at. What's important is what you see. Just like to state as well, I'm not religious or a believer, so I'm not biased towards the cross any more than Dave is to the Ankh or Brandon is to the chakra system, let's say. I also made a list of a few things that I briefly was messing around with that I thought may interest with some of you. And This is
fantastic, by the way.
Yeah, I've sent this to both Brandon and Dave. This was just some thoughts. So with the cross, we have vortex creation. Perhaps the pink line I've drew on the bottom right picture could speak to how things work in the ether. We have Pythagoras' 2-to-1 ratio. There are two lines of the cross, one line male, the other female. When placed them top one another, literally you make the one. Both male and female coming together to create life. And you also have the balance of male and female energy to create the oneness within oneself. Connect the top of the pyramids. No, connect the top of the cross and the bottoms. And we also have two pyramids, as above, so below. That can be seen on the bottom left picture. We have source at the top of the cross, disconnected from source, bottom of the cross. If we invert this, we have Satanism. The left end of the cross is the body, right end of the cross is the mind, and we must remain in the center or in the crosshairs. What do we have coincidentally within the center? We also have right angles. It is also the connection to the universal trio: source, soul, body, and mind.
Real quick, hop back just real quick. I don't want to interrupt your flow, but okay. Second number, that is the cross of the zodiac as well. And you'll see this on all the churches, right? With the crosses, but they have a circle around them. And you say, what is all that about? Why do all these old school pagan, essentially adaptation churches have these circles around that look exactly like the second one there? And the reason is that I've been told, or that researchers have found, is that it looks at the cross section of the zodiac. So that's actually what it's representative of. Now, if you also take what Elsa Dillon has talked about on the show, guys, I highly recommend checking out this episode. It's like ancient DNA, comets, and something else. Anyway, just go check it out. She talks about in there how the cross, the physical symbol for the cross, is actually an apprehension. And the fact that it's up or over your heart, if you look at the Vitruvian Man sort of thing, where the cross is up, the right angle or the perpendicular is up, then it's actually, again, an adaptation or an apprehension that really should be lowered back down to the middle, just like what's representative here in the Taurus. Now, if you take the two combined images, you take the circle around the right angle vectors, ignore the fact that it's elongated on the bottom, and let's say that we make this more of an in-between or a perfect right angles on either side, but also that the line at the bottom isn't longer and then it's dead center, then you may look at that like the Taurus you have at the bottom. And I'm so grateful you drew the cross on it, because that talks about those vertical axes, and that's also has the right angles. But if you visualize yourself as an entity inside that toroidal field, casting all of that out with the cross being implemented, now we get back to the zodiac up there with you being within the circle that's right there on the cross. That'd be the only thing that I'm adding to this would be the circle around the toroidal image on the bottom right. Now, again, that's I mean, now you're talking about it covering in everything, but I think it's interesting too, because even your relationship to this with the horizontal line being more vertical, being higher on the image, if you give it like what Elsa Dill is saying and bring it back down to middle point or your center mass, like that's where really like all of your spirit lies. And she has an amazing thing about how she talks about Shakespeare in their day. They called your heart your spleen and that you were splendid. And so your heart really is in the center of your stomach. And this is what they talk about your second consciousness or your second brain being in the gut. And then you talk about like the underworld or the underbelly. Now you think about inverted crosses, meaning that horizontal axis is now at the far perpendicular end, the below opposite end of the higher end, which again, both are examples of inversions of this reality. Really, it's the center point. Like we talk about the middle point, but either way, this experience of right angles doesn't change. It's just the fact that where it's located has to do with just the ideal being imposed. Because then you think about like your gut, your poop chute, that's the bowels, that's the underbelly, right? And so it's this interesting way of which it's put that now with your information, man, is very interesting. Because then if you take your inverted pyramids as above, so below, now you get an equilibrium. Now you get a balanced set of triangles rather than a kite shaped, one being misaligned, or different proportions, right? So it's just interesting with the cross iconography being so symbolic, but also looking at it through the lens that Elsa Dillon offered us with that adaptation sort of the symbology. Just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I love that episode, by the way. I've watched it a few times.
And she's great, right? Yeah. And Dave, you've been on. We did the Botox Lightning. That was a great episode too. That was fun.
Yes. Oh yeah, it was fantastic.
So next we have the Dursleys. The Dursleys represent normal, unawake society, what some people might call, for want of a better word, the sheep. They only care for base desires. And we can see this is mainly encapsulated by the uncle and the cousin. Pardon me. I'd just like to state that this simply isn't a retelling or rehashing of the Wizard of Oz. The common parallels, to me at least, speak to the archetypal stories and connections that are always being told and retold, and that are always just generally there through different avenues of storytelling. There's a reason that films like Harry Potter, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and franchises like this all do so well, and it's because that we understand them at a subconscious level and sometimes an unconscious one. They also represent the 7 deadly sins. We have gluttony, lust, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, and pride. This is displayed through many ways throughout the series, but I'm just going to quickly name a few. We have Dudley complaining. Dudley is the one on the left, the little kid, complaining about the lack of presence he has, pride and greed. We see pride again by Harry Potter being a boy and Potter all the time, so not allowing him to be an individual. We have Uncle Vernon clearly displaying rage at Harry, showing us wrath. We see the uncle is very large man, speaking to gluttony. We then have sloth, which speaks to how they have lost their way, their disconnection to a greater purpose. And we later see Dudley bent over in eating Harry's cake like an animal, which of course reinforces the idea of gluttony. Lastly, we have lust for power/money, which we see later in the start of the second film, as he makes a deal. Lastly, we have envy, which we see in Dudley's interaction with the snake as he pushes Harry over. The aunt also panders to Dudley, showing us how society cannot forego the desire of instantaneous pleasure and their desires being met at a whim. If things are even slightly, in their eyes, worse than before, they will always have something to complain about. All the characters speak to, and I don't mean to go all John Doe, if you've watched the film Seven, he's a serial killer, the prevalence of the 7 deadly sins in society. Everyone is slowly becoming overweight, and we have people whose whole identity is situated within their online presence. We have people who view other people as objects and do nothing but game and wank all day. We have people who hoard their riches whilst people go hungry and their family members struggle to pay bills. We have an epidemic of pride and ego, where everyone believes that they're simply right just because it's their opinion. We have people who covet and scroll endlessly on Instagram, hoping they had this or look like that. And we have people who dispel all of their inadequacies and faults on others because they lack the responsibility to take a hold on life. Our society, in a way, is plagued by the 7 deadly sins, and they are called deadly for a reason. Not only do they not help the sinner, but they damage others in the process of sinning. They move away from the 7 virtues and away from Christ consciousness, away from unity and love, which I'm sure is something that we all say that we want in society. Again, it's not up to me to say whether all of the things I label is right or wrong. It's just something that, in my opinion, for my life, I don't want to see, and I don't want to live like that. If the Dursleys then represent, for want of a better word again, the sheep, wizards or magical folk must then speak to people who are either naturally gifted or who have learned to travel beyond the inside of Plato's cave, for example. Wizards are people who, if like all watching, have a certain proclivity for spirituality and are open to things that are beyond the everyday scope of life. They're conscious of how words are spells, and this is why we call it spelling, and how important intent is, and how important it is to cultivate personal responsibility for the witch or wizard that you choose to become. They then go to the reptile house, in which we perhaps see a foreshadowing of both Harry's connection to snakes, his magical abilities, and a connection to the Slytherin house, and this is why the school children all dressed in green also. We then meet the snake for the first time, and I believe that Harry sees his powers for the first time as well. The snake is a symbol that has multitudinous meanings. The snake shows up many times throughout Harry Potter, and is mostly, but not always, as I will explain, connected to negative connotations. Many will know the snake to be that of the devil, who tempted Adam and Eve to eat from the apple. The snake is connected to several things. The pharaoh's headpiece named Urias. We have the caduceus. We have the Kundalini serpent. We have the Ouroboros. And alongside the snake and the Urias on the left-hand picture is a bird connected to the god Horus.
Mandela effect, by the way.
Hmm?
That's a Mandela effect. A lot of folks, me included,
which one?
Remember the vulture on the King Tut's bust there. We just remember the cobra, and a ton of people, cartoons have reflected this as well. That's a Mandela.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Horus is connected to the properties of healing, protection, and also the sun. In the second film, we see the correlations between the god Horus and Dumbledore's phoenix. The phoenix blinds the basilisk, saving Harry from sudden death. It brought in the sword to kill the basilisk. It gives him Harry Tom Riddle's diary. He heals Harry's venom. And then he carries Harry, Ron, Ginny, and Lockhart to safety, representing the healing and protection properties. Again, we see the rudeness and the separation between Harry and the rest of the family in how they treat animals. Dudley wants immediate gratification and believes that the snake is there for his pleasure. He wants the snake to move and only wants entertainment from it. Harry, on the other hand, recognizes that it's wrong to bang on the glass and wake it when it's trying to sleep. He recognizes, due to his illumination, the divine spark, the lightning bolt, or his scar, that the rest of the world lacks compassion towards snakes, which here can be representative of nature, as they're in a zoo. Perhaps speaking to the journey of the Kundalini serpent and ascension, and how most are negligent at best when it comes to their own development. However, these things take time. You can't simply just bang the glass, hoping that your Kundalini rises. It is an arduous project and process of self-discovery, knowledge-seeking, and attempts to become as illuminated as you can by shining light on your shadow and Plato's cave around you. We see Harry talking to the snake, discussing how he was also bred in captivity. As Dudley interrupts Harry's conversation and pushes Harry to the ground, Harry then becomes rightfully angry, and causes the protective glass to disappear, in turn making Dudley fall into the enclosure and then releasing the snake. The releasing of the snake speaks to the beginning of the journey. Harry has used his powers for the first time and has now begun the journey of the Kundalini serpent. As Harry receives his very first letter from Hogwarts, we see the symbol of the cross momentarily as the owls drop the letter. The cross is, of course, among many other things, a symbol of transformation. This is the moment of transformation as he starts to become an individual. He is humanized and receives his first letter from Hogwarts, addressed directly to him, and also his first ever letter. This is also the first half. Imagine the cross is a dual symbol made of two parts, as we discussed earlier. We have Harry's transformation into the wizarding world from the, let's say, Muggle world. First, he must be presented with a choice or an option. Then it's up to him to take steps towards that. The uncle / society doesn't want Harry to visit Hogwarts or get involved with magic. This is symbolic of society's lack of understanding, underappreciation, and perhaps fear, etc., of the occult and esoteric knowledge and practices. Just like Auntie Em in The Wizard of Oz, he doesn't want Harry to go to Hogwarts or get involved with magic due to him not understanding and therefore being fearful of magic and the unknown. It's also interesting that we have the evil aunt and the uncle, again like Wizard of Oz, and many films that include this theme. We see the family go on a trip to a remote island in hopes to escape the magic that they fear. Notice how there is a storm with thunder and lightning, foreshadowing Harry's meeting with Hagrid, in which he will be introduced to by an external force, the wizarding world. The aunt and the uncle are also seen higher up in the house, speaking to how society sees the hierarchy of importance between these characters. The aunt and the uncle are in a double bed upstairs while Harry sleeps on the floor. Harry is then seen creating a birthday cake in the sand, perhaps alluding to him having some sort of intuitive psychic knowledge of what is to come, but not fully understanding it. Hagrid then arrives, who represents care and also the divine feminine, and gives Harry a cake. The colour pink and the colour green speak to care, compassion, and unconditional love, which is an element in Hagrid's character, is that we see often. Harry also turns 11. Now, 11 is an extremely important number in numerology, as it is a master number. It speaks to many things, but is mainly connected to spiritual awareness, natural intelligence, and synchronicities. We then hear the aunt explaining how she saw Harry's mum as a freak, abnormal and strange, because she was a witch, and states that that's why she resents Harry, because she was aware that Harry would turn out the same. Excuse me. Of course, reinforcing the idea of how society views people who branch into the mysteries of the universe and occult knowledge. I'm sure most people listening have first-hand experience from this, let's say, isolation or judgment from friends, family, society, etc. Hagrid then gives Dudley a tail and they all panic except for Harry, showing that Harry is comfortable with things that are not of this world. He even goes so far as to laugh instead of shout and scream, which is the reaction by the aunt, uncle, and of course Dudley. Harry is then given the choice, and I emphasize the choice, between staying with the Dursleys or following Hagrid. Now in this scene, Hagrid is essentially offering Harry the red or the blue pill from the Matrix. What's important to note is that Hagrid opens the door for Harry and allows him, if he so chooses, to go through the door. What is it that Morpheus says to Neo? I can only show you the door, Neo. You're the one that has to walk through it. And we have exactly the same situation here. Harry can either see how far the rabbit hole goes, or he can forget it all and follow society's orders as he always has. As Harry is the full card in the Major Arcana, he decides to take the leap of faith and to follow Hagrid through the door. Hagrid may also be seen as...
Real quick. just to interrupt. Okay, if you look at the birthday cake, not only does the spelling stand out, right? Happy, E-E, and then birthday, D-A-E. But if you look at it, there's a line going from top to bottom that separates the P, the H, and then the H in Harry. What does that look like? The symbol that traces out. If you ignore the colors, because they're usually represented colored differently, but
Yin and yang.
yes, it's the yin yang right there.
Wow.
Which is, if you
Dude,
look
that's
at
awesome.
it, the message of the movie, which is, again, the icing on the cake, is balance, the recognition of yin yang, which is literally in icing on cake, which is the metaphorical icing on the cake, finding balance. Anyway.
Dude, that's amazing.
You're doing awesome.
I love that. I love that. Hagrid may also be seen as the Nephilim, I believe I'm pronouncing that right. As in the books, he's described as being twice the size of an average man and is around 11 feet tall and nearly 5 times as wide. I think he was only 8 foot in the films due to filming, ease of him getting into buildings, etc. And just to allow the flow of the film to move around a bit easier. He chooses to follow Hagrid and finds himself in Diagon Alley heading towards Gringotts Bank. He owns the vault correlating to the number 687, which is linked with money, riches, and abundance. Behind Harry, when the vault opens, we see briefly the number 88, again speaking to abundance and prosperity. Hagrid then opens the vault containing the Philosopher's Stone, which is labeled 713. However, I couldn't find the universal meaning for this number, and I believe that this was done on purpose. There's a theory that in some films they often tell you 3 things with either 1 truth and 2 lies, or 1 lie and 2 truths. They give you the knowledge, sure, but it is up to the individual to decipher what is true about what they show you and what is false. They do this, of course, to avoid karmic debt. They give you the knowledge, but they sprinkle in some falsities, and it's up to you to decipher which you specifically believe or choose to follow. In Hollywood, they do this with the villains, notably.
Yeah. 713, by the way, numerology adds up.
As he leaves Gringotts Bank.
713 adds up. No, it's okay. I didn't. 713 adds up numerologically to the number 11. 7 plus 1 plus 3 is 11. So 713, maybe that again.
And he's 11 as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
May allude to that master number as well.
Yeah. Well, he gets it as well, doesn't he? He attains the thing in the bank, which is the Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah. And
so I think he's spot on there.
And it's just a breakdown. But if you add them together, you need to do work to get there, right? It still symbolizes that there's an effort to achieve 11. But you must look at it, first of all, not as the number presented, which is just one whole number, 713, but take it as its wholes, which is actually a trinity that you add together to then equal the master number 11. So again, it's sort of like all things. They're right out there in front of you. You just need the eyes to see it.
Mm-hmm. And as you said, it's 3 numbers as well.
Yeah. The trinity again, representing it.
Mm-hmm. What a man. As he leaves Gringotts' vault, he then goes into Ollivander's to get himself his first wand. After trying 2 wands and failing, he receives a 3rd wand of Voldemort's old wand, in which we then see the lights flicker. Notice where the wind, or again tornado, is specifically located, as well as being all over the room. It's located at the crown chakra, or the top of the head, symbolizing connection. The connection between Harry and the wand and Harry and Voldemort, and also of his development and his start of his journey. Hagrid then gives Harry an owl, and Harry's owl is white. Hagrid, I believe the name is, representing pureness and virginity of magic and the wizarding world, and of course pureness of the soul. Harry then boards the train to Hogwarts and meets Ron and Hermione for the first time. Now, the train represents the journey or the transformation between the Muggle world and that of the Wizarding world. It's the beginning of the journey and transcends 2 planes of existence. Harry's life as a normal boy and Harry's life as the chosen one. This is also your, let's say, less developed self, or your unenlightened self and your higher self. It can also symbolize progression, being that of the 3 characters' development as they all meet on the train. It's the unification of all three parts of ourselves, just like in The Wizard of Oz and other films. To face the trials that lie before us, we need body, mind, and soul all working together. Now, I have 22 more slides. It's 38 minutes. Are you wanting to pause it here, or are you wanting to carry on into the whole thing?
What do you guys think?
I mean, I just have so many questions. I think a part two would be
I'm easy either way.
I was going to say perhaps a part two if that would be ideal, because for me personally, I can keep going. But the thing with me is that I have to remind myself that I can keep track because of the fact that very graciously, I believe there's some motivation from some of the things I've done in the past that Lewis has put into here. So I'm tracking personally. But for those that have many questions and things like that, perhaps it'd be best for a part two.
And I think a part two also, like the Wizard of Oz one, allows us to go back and watch the movie and sort of look at the things that you've talked about here in
right.
the next presentation. Another thing I wanted to add on to this is maybe, and I'm sure you thought of it, that the train perhaps also, to a primitive society that didn't know what trains were, may be described as a giant serpent or a snake. So as all three parts come together, and yes, the journey is facilitated, it's facilitated through what one could describe as a snake. You know what I mean? So again, snake symbolism because of how trains work, right? Or how they appear from above, right? They look like a snake slithering over land. So it's just an interesting symbology as well, that mode of transportation, because it could have had to be anything whimsical. They could have had that bus, just kind of.
Well, it's your sinusoidal wave, right? That keeps a resonant cavity stable.
And more, I mean, back to the Kundalini, all of this stuff, the
right.
Everything. So all of this is just so cool. And like I said, I'm going to run out here and tell my wife all about this. And I know what she's doing for the rest of the day is re-watching these things. So I think a part two would be dope as shit, man. This is just so much cool information. And I would not be remiss for the opportunity to go look at a few of these things that we just talked about here.
Perfect. Well, before we wrap it up, is there anything, Lewis or Brandon, that you guys wanted to say to the audience before we close this off?
I love y'all and I love this. And thank y'all so much for just being yourselves and the audience for listening and getting as excited about this as we are. And just thank you for Lewis for doing all this amazing work and putting all this together. Because we know as people who present stuff, what it looks like, we flow through
right.
it, we enjoy it together, but really the logistics of putting this together, to doing the work, to watching the movies. I mean, just thank you for what you've put into this and the vision you have to bring this through. It's very inspiring. Yes. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate your appreciation. No, we've just got a lot more philosophical wisdom in part two.
That's so
fantastic. Well, I'm super, super looking forward to part two. And to everybody else out there, thank you so much. And we'll catch everybody very, very soon.
Much love.